further down the table. And that is where we start this evening in the company of Izzy Christiansen, Micah Richards and Gary Neville, because in the last 2 hours, Chelsea have sacked their head coach, Liam Rosenior, after just over 100 days in charge. So just over 100 days into a 6.5-year contract. What a mess.
A massive mess, difficult for a young coach. Who's obviously still sort of very early in his career. I hope he can move on from it very quickly and put it behind him and recognise where he's been. A really poor reflection and a shambles from the ownership and the sporting directors. I don't think the players have helped either. Cucurella and Enzo Fernandez, the two players who probably have got the most seniority and influence in that dressing room, coming out and turning on him and mentioning Maresca a few weeks ago. And then obviously Liam eventually has to fight back, and he has to sort of turn on the players a little bit last night. And when you see that, you know pretty much your time's up at a football club.
What I don't understand is when we was hearing all the noise throughout the club, when they signed Liam Rosenior, and all those pundits and people was questioning it, thinking to go from Strasbourg to go to Chelsea, it's too much of a big club. But they was talking about, he knows he's played in the league, he knows how the club, the bigger, wider project is, because it's a club that's underneath Chelsea. And we sort of believe the hype a little bit. And as a coach, I think he's fantastic. In terms of the transitions and the rotations and stuff, I saw bits to his game where I thought, actually, I can see it. But at the end of it, it was Chelsea Football Club. And the gap was too big. And what I'm more disappointed in, after all the briefings and stuff before, that they've not stuck with him in his first difficult period.
Because one of the things that we were led to believe was that they wanted him because within the operation at Strasbourg, they'd seen how he coached, they'd seen how he dealt with adversity, they'd seen how he dealt with positivity, they'd seen how he dealt with the media, so they knew exactly what they were getting. And now they've changed their mind after 100 days.
Well, obviously, the results and everything has led to this, but in terms of coming in January, a very busy month in the football calendar, it comes in, he's got to hit the ground running straight away. And polar opposite style to Enzo Maresca. I think in terms of what he's asking to do, Micah touched on it there, you go in sort of radical man-to-man marking systems. It's a lot for players to start to understand in a short space of time. And I just think he hasn't managed to connect with the players. But you wish him all the best because, like Gary said, young coach, he's probably got a very bright future. Look at Coventry City and Frank Lampard, young coach, relatively young, and look what he's done at Coventry. He's taken a step in a different direction and been hugely successful.
What do you think they want out of the rest of this season? By removing him, are they saying, well, we've got a better chance in the FA Cup semi-final at the weekend?
The fear, obviously, I think, is that maybe that it would go from bad to worse and they would get beat by Leeds on Sunday with him in charge. I mean, they may get beat by Leeds anyway, but that with him in charge, there is a good chance they'll get beat, and potentially they might still think they've got an outside chance of finishing in the Champions League, and that the only way to do that is to change. But Chelsea have got no experience of winning in the four key areas of the club: ownership, sporting directors, coach and players. None of them have won. The only people at Chelsea who've won and know how to win are the fans. So the idea of bringing in really young players with the youngest average age in the whole league, a young coach, young sporting directors relative to the experience that you need at a top club in Europe, and a young ownership of 2 or 3 years, they need some experience from somewhere who know how to navigate what would be these types of situations.
So does that start with the next head coach? Because Sky Sports News had a graphic on earlier of the previous 6. So you're going from Tuchel to Pochettino to Graham Potter to Lampard to Maresca.
When this ownership came in, though, they very much declared that they wanted it to be a young project, and sort of all the players that were brought in are young. They're all on massive lengths of contracts. The coaches that they've brought in are young. All the experience that they had in the club has exited, because I'm not whether they don't like being challenged or whether they genuinely do believe you can win with kids. You can't win everything with kids and with inexperience. You do need some maturity through the club at some point.
And that, I suppose, as you're going forward is, are they going to change that? Are the ownership going to change their policy of investing in young players that then gives them a higher sell on, if that's what they need to do? Bearing in mind, there's a lot of hedge fund money there, so it's about making a return.
Well, I think they've got what they've got on their side now. The ownership is time, because Callum McFarlane will take over till the end of the season, and that'll give them breathing space to sit down and review what they need to do. And I think that it is a decision that they've made with Saturday in mind. They're still with the chance of winning a trophy this season, which is mad to think, in the context of where they've been all season. But ultimately, I think the players, is where I'd start first. I saw the way they played last night, and I get it tactically, they weren't entirely sure their jobs, and you could see that. But I think you've got to look in the mirror and go, am I doing my best? Am I trying? What's my job? And I'm going to make it as clear as possible to make sure I put a good account of myself on the pitch.
I think where it's broke down, especially me watching it, I think the players are talking too much, are not doing their job. Fernandez coming out, Cucurella talking about experiences elsewhere and all that sort of stuff. And I actually think the manager's not helped himself. And I said at the start, and I really believed in what he potentially could do. And I watched his teams at Strasbourg and everything, and I thought, maybe it's come a little bit too soon. But then in his interviews, he started playing up to the media, which has not helped him.
What do you mean by playing up to the media? Because
he's giving them too much.
Yeah, but if you're a head coach and you've got League Cup semi-finals, FA Cup, Premier League,
Okay.
European, you can't help but talk to the media all the time.
The huddle, respecting the ball.
Okay, right.
What is that? That's nonsense for everyone. We know what social media is like nowadays. Every little detail, everything is scrutinised, and I don't think he helped himself in that aspect, which then brought more pressure to him and then the players as well.
Yeah, I mean, Jose Mourinho came to Chelsea 20 years ago, 21, 22 years ago, and spoke a lot and said a lot.
Yeah.
But he'd won a lot.
But
That was
won.
like a shield, wasn't it?
Yeah,
for
but
the
he
team?
won. The results are the things that have
Correct.
killed Liam in the end. Obviously, he lost his last 5 matches. I get Micah's point. I think it's really difficult when you're playing 3 games a week and you've got to do 6 press conferences, the one pre-match day before and the one after the game. And he is, I think, someone who wanted to try and engage. I look, whether it's right or wrong, I get it what you're saying, that some of the things that he said were difficult to listen to, and you thought players might, to be fair, not listen to that type of language. But the reality of it is, I do still think that we all probably knew when this appointment was made and a 6-year contract was given, that this was a big jump for Liam to have to make. I just hope he gets on straight away.
Just on that, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. What I'm saying is it put more pressure and more scrutiny on him for people to make a judgment on him. And then when you don't get results, people go back to what he said.
Right, just a final one to you before you go and get your sweets off Rob Hawthorne in the commentary box, which I know you're looking forward to. The club's statement ended with, "We can now self-reflect about our process." Right? You have executive experience in football clubs. That might be a great line if you're an executive. If you're a fan, you're thinking, what a load of guff, aren't you?
Look, I sacked a manager. I sacked a manager 4 games into a season, then sacked another one 4 months later, and I've spoken publicly about I got it badly wrong. Absolutely disgraceful decision that I made, and disgraceful decisions. And, you know, obviously fans will realise, I mean, they're obviously looking at themselves and recognising they've got this badly wrong. It's a reflection upon the owners and sporting directors more than it is on the young coach that's been appointed.